Meditation is the dropping off of mind and body. And it's the same thing that happens in self-inquiry. There's a dropping off of mind and body, and who remains? When mind and body have dropped off, who is it that remains?
I found that these dyads are the most powerful experience that I've ever seen for people awakening right before my eyes. And even in my own experience, I found the dyads to verify where I was on my own path, and I could see immediately if I was speaking from the person or if I was speaking from the eye of my true nature.
Part 4. Catching the ox. Spiritual will rise in the skies.
question, who am I, we can come to some sort of conceptual understanding of what we are. Solve the problem. We need to be aware of ourselves as we actually are. The Bhagavan's part is a very, very simple part. It's extremely deep. It is the ultimate. It's the complete dissolution of ourself as a separate individual. And when we dissolve back into what we actually are, which is the infinite.
A lot of this is about trusting your own intuition that
stage, there's nothing that we can force. It's about steady presence, firm, gentle, unwavering, one of hopeless vigilance. Krishnamurti said, the ability to observe without evaluating is the highest form of intelligence. Here we see through the evaluating mind, which is based on the past, based on memory. We see through the preferences of the mind, which are based on the patterns of craving and aversion. In Christian language, you could say that to give yourself fully means to make the journey from my will to God's will. In yogic language, you could say that when energy moves beyond the sixth chakra, the command center, as it makes its way to the crown chakra, it is the surrender of personal will to divine will. Meister Eckhart said, completely surrender your will to God, and in return he will give you his will, so fully and without reserve that it will become your own will. And embodied as one aligns with inner intelligence, a chronic field or conscious spirit that dances as all.
Dance or die.
Ramana called it the heart. Nisargadatta called it the absolute. Zen calls it no mind. There's no doer, no thinker, no one left to awaken. Just this vast, naked, direct knowing, untouched by the rise and fall of worlds.
When we awaken to something, it's like we discover the reality of our being. But awakening is not enough, it's just the beginning. When attention turns back into itself, the first thing you recognize there's something different here. For the first time, you're not going to objectivity to object. So there's innate knowing, no self-awareness, like you just know. You know level where the mind completely with and it's not something you can doubt. You just know. How will the mind, how will your being is not like that. Usually it's a sense of sensation, a sense of innocence, a sense of well-being, tranquility, or just sort of innate knowing beyond the mind. It's as if you recognize yourself in your thoughts for the first time. You used to refer to yourself as an object, as an ego, as a person. And now you find your subjectivity truly are. When it happens, there's the naivety of having touched something that is never been affected by anything, that does not age, does not die, does not born, that innate knowingness that cannot be applied through words is the first type of recognition that seekers have. And then as they marry, get acquainted with that, it starts to radiate a sense of light, settle light, but then you take joy, sort of love, which are very important fundamental qualities, because even when you recognize yourself, then the mind will come and you'll just push your attention away. But if you have a sense of well-being, a sense of love and joy, it will be much easier to marinate and rest on yourself than if you just dry, empty self-awareness. This type of mental sudden does not require any sort of imagination. It does not require the use of the mind for anything. No. You have to let go of everything. Let go of imagination, letting go of the mind, letting go of the one who wants to surrender, letting go of effort, letting go of effortlessness, letting go that you need to get or you need to pay attention to some object. It's just about reposing or resting on your own soul, on your own being. Just being, not doing anything. Turning the arrow of attention back to yourself. Resting in your own awareness, your own being. So this is not a practice. It's a practiceless practice. And it's very much required. There's something nice.
because those masks had megaphonic mouths, so that in the open air theater they would project the sound. So the persona, the person, is the mask, is the role you're playing. All your friends and relations and parents and teachers are busy telling you who you are, what your role in life is, and you know there are a certain number of acceptable roles to play. So, first of all then, your sense of I is your sense of who you are. Whether you are Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Sailor, Rich Man, Poor Man, Beggar Man, Thief, whether you're a clown type, a strong, silent man type, a clean, fine, feminine type, etc., we can name dozens of them. But you identify yourself with a certain way of acting. It's quite complicated, but nevertheless, there's a certain way of acting with which you identify yourself and which constitutes your image. Now that image of yourself that you have is a social institution. In the same way, for example, as it is a social institution to divide the day into 24 hours, or to divide the foot into 12 inches, or to
Óyeme, tú bailas bien chévere. ¿De dónde tú eres? Ah, encantado, yo soy qué calor. Pero la noche está agradable, ¿verdad? Y encima, es luna llena. Ya me dijiste tu nombre. Tú eres una chica muy simpática. Esta noche hago una fiesta en mi casa. Y bueno, no sé, tal vez me preguntaba si querrías venir. Tengo el apartamento aquí al lado y estamos cerquita. Vente, charlamos un poquito. Qué divertido, ¿verdad? ¿Lo estás pasando bien? Yo también. Mami, tú eres muy bella. ¿Cómo llevas eso del calor? Ahora que estamos desnudos, déjame decirte algo. Ay, mami, qué rico.
It's a real hard look. Now what are you doing? What's the difference between a hard look and a soft look? Why? With your hard look, you are straining muscles around your eyes. You're starting to stare. Now if you stare at a distant image, like a clock far away from you, you make the image fuzzy. You want to see the clock clearly. You must close your eyes, imagine black in your mind, then lazily see the image. The light will come to you. And what you do is I say, now listen carefully. Listen very carefully to what I'm saying. You'll find you beginning to strain yourself around your ears. Golly, I remember in school, I had a boy who couldn't read sat next to me. And he wanted to convince the teacher that he really was trying to read. So he would say, run, bar, and he was using all his muscles. Well, what have they got to do with it? What is straining your muscles here to here, straining your muscles here to see? What's that got to do with seeing? Nothing. Right, supposing somebody says, okay, now, you've got to use your will. You've got to exercise strong will. That's the ego, isn't it? What do you do when you exercise your will? Boy, they say, grit your teeth, clench your fist. See? So you grit your teeth, you clench your fist, or you want to stop wayward emotions, you go uptight. You pull your stomach in, or hold your breath, or contract your rectal muscle. Like this. But all those activities have absolutely nothing to do with the efficient function of your nervous system.
Is put on this earth and has come to the conclusion that we are put on this earth to fulfill our potential by finding our true mission in life. Emmett Fox calls this your heart's desire. What is your heart's desire? Your heart's desire is something that is placed deep down inside you, maybe even before you're born, and it's something that calls to you and sings to you and lures you on throughout your life. And the reason that we say that only 1 or 2 or 5 out of 100 people fulfill their potential in any given generation is because most people ignore the calling of this heart's desire. They push it aside, they ignore it, they pretend it isn't there. They get involved in bills and families and business and careers, and this tugs at them. Sometimes they don't get into it until later on in life, but every single person has the ability to establish for themselves a mission. So then let's look at the men and women who have affected mankind in the most positive and profound way throughout all of history. In our civilization, in our culture, the most powerful person was Jesus of Nazareth, a humble carpenter who preached for 3 years in Galilee and then died in Jerusalem, but has had more of an impact on more people in this world than any other man who ever lived, than all the other kings and all the other monarchs writers of history, one simple man who never wrote a word, never appeared on television, never cut a record, was the man who has had more influence than anyone else. And beyond Jesus, there was Buddha. The followers of Buddha, and interestingly enough, Buddha taught a very similar message to Jesus. He taught the message of universal love. He taught the message of the brotherhood of all mankind, that all of us are united in loving each other. And also Muhammad. And Muhammad has followers that number in the hundreds of millions. Buddha's followers number almost 1 billion. The followers of Jesus number probably 2 billion. And if you look down the people who have been affected by them, you have St. Francis of Assisi, has had a profound influence establishing the Franciscan order. You have, in our day, you have Mother Teresa of Calcutta, having a profound influence. You have my mentor, Albert Schweitzer of Africa.
El sol,
Schweitzer, Schweitzer, and
la brisa.
you have people like Florence Nightingale and others. What is the unifying
Estamos
theme of
locos
these
por
people?
llegar a la cima
Then
deseada.
Ralph Waldo Trine wrote a wonderful book many years ago called
Somos
What the Whole
hijos de la
World
luna,
Is Seeking. What the whole world is seeking.
hermanos del sol. La brisa nos llama. Solo bailemos, porque hoy conquistaremos la montaña.
earth that is here for no reason. Everybody has a purpose, and your purpose is to find your purpose. Your purpose is to find your mission, the place where you can make a significant contribution. The second part of becoming a totally loving person is to accept total responsibility for everything that you are and everything that you become. Accept total responsibility, which means no blaming, no excuses. Just get on with it. Number 3 is learn to forgive. Again, the key to the kingdom of heaven is forgiveness. The key to the kingdom of heaven, the key to all spiritual development, straight gate is forgiveness. The ability to freely forgive other people. No grudges, no anger, no frustration, no grudges. Just let go of all grievances against you. That's why it says in the Lord's Prayer, it says, and forgive us our sins as we forgive those who have sinned against us. Number 4 is feed your mind with loving thoughts. Feed your mind with loving
Tienes que dejar que todo caiga en su lugar.
Don't feed your mind with mental junk.
Tienes que
Feed your mind with the
soltar
kind of
eso
thoughts
que
that
más
are
temes
consistent with
perder. Tienes que llorar si eso te ayuda a sanar.
Set noble goals and ideals to
No puedes
guide the rest of your
esperar
life.
que el tiempo lo
Yourself that the values and the goals and the ideals of the very best person that you could possibly be. Number 6 is take care of your body. Take care of your body. Remember, the body is the temple of the soul. Give it good exercise, give it good rest. Take good care of your body. And number 7, practice the golden rule. Kindness, patience, tolerance of the diversity and difference of other people. As you practice these principles, you will find yourself drawn, almost inevitably, almost inexorably, you'll find yourself drawn toward your mission. You'll find yourself drawn toward the area of
La oscuridad que pretendes ignorar no cambiará si haces solo siempre lo mismo. Que solo de tu confort y empieza todo otra vez.
Remember, you're put on this earth for other people. The measure of how well you're doing as a human being is very simply this, is that you only have love to the degree to which you express love to others. You only have love to the degree to which you express love to if you like. You can only have love to the degree to which you feel love for other persons. So the more you express love to other people, and that's why we are given families, and that's why we are given intimate relationships, and that's why children are sent for love in such a way that we can know love, in such a way that we can know love, in such a way that we can know love, in such a way that we can know love.